Wait. We got a brand new opening, and I totally forgot. Boom!
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality. Booyah! Brand new opening.
Yeah, brand new opening, and you have brand new lighting that I'm really jealous of.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't mean to make you feel jealous, but as we're starting to put together the home studio over here and making this a real permanent facility, it was really fun to get all these LED lights, and it looks great on my green screen over here.
Yeah, you look great, my friend. So how are you? What's going on?
I'm doing good, but I'm a little bit frustrated today. I'm getting more and more frustrated with what's going on in California, in particular with what's going on at the theme park scenario. I have over here behind me, let's take a look at that. That is a rendering of the Westin Anaheim Resort, which just opened, I believe, this week in Anaheim. To nobody. Why? Because the California government is refusing to allow theme parks to open. They're putting, in my opinion, really onerous rules in order for them to be reopening. They've already, Disney, for example, has proven that they can operate in Florida. Universal has proven that they can operate in Florida. These companies are operating in different parts of the world, Anthony, but California is not allowing these parks to open. And due to these restrictions, it could be as long as next summer before the largest theme parks in California reopen. I think that's tragic for the Anaheim community.
I think what you're hearing through friends and just people in general and news outlets that people live in California, and they're leaving California because of the taxes. They're leaving California because of these rules. And again, I think you and I stand side by side when I say this, that we are all in for some of these shutdowns that we had to go through, especially here in New York. And I'm the first person to say, wear your mask, 6 feet distancing,
that's right,
and be safe. But, Disney World got a lot of flack for opening, and all of a sudden they opened, and it seems like it's working.
Right.
And listen, at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, this country is built on capitalism, and you cannot basically run a state that is built on taxes without taxes. The way you run a state is to get people in the theme park so they can pay their taxes. So that hotel can pay its taxes so they can do things and get rid of these tents all over LA and all over California with the homeless population. They can't put their foot, up the butt of business owners and not let them do business. With that said, you got to do it safely.
Right. But I'm starting to feel, Anthony, that they're not really, they're going too far in on the safety element. We can't live in a hermetically sealed universe. We have to find some balance between protecting lives and protecting our economy. And what happens to people when they can't earn a living, when they are trapped inside. We've talked about this on the show. We've seen suicide levels go up. We're seeing economic despair amongst a proportion of our population. It's going to get worse if we can't get meetings, events, conventions, and theme parks up and running. And I'm getting really frustrated with the whole thing.
Yeah, and I don't think we should be frustrated at all. What I think we should do is we should just keep talking about the things that we can control. And that's one of the things, with everyone right now. Everyone's feeling very frustrated. We're going into the holidays. Yeah. I'm feeling a little frustrated because I want to have regular holidays when we really can't. Right. So the number one thing is that we have to do is take the frustration out of what's going on, because especially going through the election and what's going to come after that, and who knows, it's going to be up and down. Who knows who's going to run after the president. So the number one priority is to relieve that frustration by action. And I think, one of the things we do on this show is we do a good job of really telling people, the steps they can take to control their environment, because you can't control everything. And I think Newsom in California is getting a bad rap,
right?
Well earned, it seems, because of exactly what you're saying. But the frustration isn't going to help anything or anyone. But it is very it's very tight. Listen, people are going to have to control their own circumstances, and what they're going to do is they're going to move, and they're going to go to places that are cheaper, where they can find employment. And again, safety first. But there's a way, it's proven. What was the survey yesterday that came out, that 0.0003% of people on an airplane will basically get COVID if somebody's sitting next to them with COVID.
Right. It was a study that was done. So this is not the real world, but they did plenty of studies backed by the airlines, backed by the government, and they found that if you're sitting next to somebody, according to the dummies that they use and all the scientific analysis, that you have very, very little chance. Anthony put it out as 0.003% chance of getting it if you're wearing a mask. We can travel, we can do it safely, and we are going to continue to be cheerleaders for getting everybody out there in safely. So, Anthony, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this is there's a lot of hotels in the Anaheim community and far beyond that are finding themselves distressed, in financial troubles because of all of the lockdowns, because of the lack of travel. And in Anaheim in particular, 0 meetings and events essentially, and no theme parks. It's got to be very tough on those people. So we're going to be talking today about, distressed hotels.
Yeah, and I'm working on a project in California that's it's right next to the convention center, and they're having some difficulty finding even construction loans. So it's a tough spot. We're going to come out of it better and stronger. But let's talk to our good friend, the doctor.
I do. Now, before we bring on Dr. Donald Wise, hey, I want to thank everybody for saying that you like the new opening. You have comments on it. I'd love to hear more feedback on what you think about that opening. Every single week, we're trying to do this show better and better and better, and we really want to make sure that we can appeal to each and every one of you. So why don't we bring in Dr. Donald Wise? Hold on, let me do this. Boom. All right, I think that's going to be our next graphic that we've got to update here. Dr. Donald Wise, thank you so much for being here. Now, for those of you that don't know how awesome this guy is, he's been focused on the financial side of the business. I'm sorry to say this, Donald, for decades and decades. No offense, but you've been at it, credited with starting CBRE. You co-founded Turnbull Capital Group. You are very entrenched in all of this. So, Anthony, what better person to talk about the situation that we're in right now with distressed properties? Look at this. You also served in Vietnam. Thank you so much for doing your part to keep us all safe. Little me, infant Glenn, appreciates what you were doing back then. Yeah. So,
Anthony? Thanks for being on, Dr. Wise. I truly appreciate it. And again, thank you for your service. And you have a legendary career in an area that is probably most important going forward in the next 6 months, year, or 2 years. So welcome to the show, and give us your weather forecast.
Buckle your seatbelt. It's going to be choppy, and it's going to be a roller coaster ride.
Right.
Okay, pointed out, we're not out of the woods with these regulatory issues. Back in the day in March, we were talking about whether it was going to be a Nike curve or a W or whatever. Clearly, we've seen the W. We've seen, I believe, many cities, bars are shut down again. Here in my hometown of Newport Beach, still very severe restrictions. I was just talking about terrible situation with the theme parks, whether it's Universal Studios or the Disney product, etc. This is a wacky world.
Do you think what's going on in government, do you think that's going to play out before the election, after the election? And do you think it's going to be a significant stimulus for our industry specifically?
I don't think the problem, Anthony, is I don't think they really get it. You can't compare the hotel industry with the airline industry. The airline industry, you could pretty much count on 2 hands, the major airlines, the smaller airlines. Hotel industry, yes, we have the Marriotts and the Hiltons and the Hyatts, but as you pointed out so many times, it's all basically, the smaller and not so small independent owners. And so, I think part of the issues right now is many hotel owners, let's call them borrowers because most of them are borrowers. They're hoping the government has come out with some new, 3% loan program or something that's going to help us out. And I got to tell you, talking to a lot of people every day, I just feel that's a very, very low probability. So we're going to just have to buckle down, and I think the private markets, private capital, private equity is going to save the day, because I don't think the government is going to really be our friend in this situation.
So where do the Blackstones and the Pebblebrook of the world sit right now? What are they doing? They're holding tight? Are they looking to buy? What are they doing?
Oh, they're certainly looking to buy. I just think that they probably feel it's a little bit too early to squeeze the trigger. I don't know how many billions they're sitting on, but we know it's a lot. And we know they're looking at everything. But I think, as we all know, we've been through forbearance, what I facetiously call forbearance 1.0, and then PPP. And now clearly the forbearance 2.0 is very near the end of term, if not past the end of term. So it's, this last quarter, the first quarter of next year, we're going to really start seeing regrettably, some terrible carnage.
Right.
That's when I think, that's when they're going to get in the market. A lot of buyers they're concerned that we're too early. There's still there's too much unknown. And this is a pandemic. There's no playbook for this. This is our fifth rodeo. We went through the VMS Realty foreclosure and bankruptcy back in 1989. It was a $6.5 billion workout. It was an $8 billion workout at the end of the day. We went through the RTC debacle. That was my partner, Michael Brannigan, sold 240 hotels, notes. I sold over 100 hotels when I was a CBRE. And then, of course, the terrible, terrible events after 9/11, and then 2008, 2010. This is our fifth rodeo. But there's no playbook here. And clearly, all these governmental interventions, it's like who's on first, who's on second, and you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I can't believe what's happened to these poor restaurants that tee themselves up, totally stock their restaurant to be in business, and then the government says, "Oh, by the way, we're only kidding.
Right.
You're tomorrow for we don't know how long." So these are just, again, a pandemic, no playbook, Anthony.
So if you had a magic wand and you were sitting in a position that you can make some changes, what are the first, second, and third things you would do for our industry specifically?
Well, that's a loaded question. Well,
what's the first thing needs to be done?
I would say more forbearance, but the problem with forbearance is that's not the answer to the riddle. That's just a temporary Band-Aid. Forbearance does not mean it's been forgiven. It just means it's accrued. So perhaps some forbearance that might help. We have been betting on the fact that preferred equity, bringing in fresh equity to these properties, is going to be the answer to the riddle, because clearly putting mezz on top of distressed debt is a totally oxymoron. That makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, we probably count the number of hotels in this country right now that have debt that have reached, currently at a 1.4 debt coverage ratio. So, debt is not the answer.
Right. Right, because if you have no income anyway, how are you supposed to pay off debt? And the more that you borrow, the deeper that hole is going to get. Doctor, could you explain to people what mezzanine loans are if they don't understand that?
Well, mezzanine is just really a fancy word for a second deed of trust.
Yep.
If you had a first mortgage on your home for $100,000 and you wanted to do a remodel and maybe put it in a pool, so you put a second trust deed of $25,000 or $30,000 on your home. That's really what mezzanine is. It's just by definition junior debt, junior to the single.
And they're second in line for payback, correct?
That's correct. That is correct.
So that's a little bit more risky for the person lending the mezzanine loan because they're second in line to get paid back.
Well, and the cost of funds is going to reflect that clearly.
Right.
If you get up into bridge territory right now is basically 7 to 8% and 2 points. Hard money all day long is probably 12% and 5 points.
Tell me what hard money is when you say hard money.
Hard money is basically, it's sort of the lowest tier from the standpoint of quality of debt, has the highest risk associated. Some people facetiously call it the loan-to-own business. In all truthfulness, most hard money lenders are not seeking to own the real estate, but they are seeking to be compensated fairly for the risk that they're taking. So it's very expensive debt.
Right. And right now there's really no one looking to borrow. So if I have a small hotel, I am, I'm not a convention hotel. Maybe I'm not in a city. Maybe I'm near the water. And it's seasonal. I had a decent season. I'm going through the winter. So in the winter, it was basically covering me 30-40% occupancy, and I can get through. I'm not going to get any of that occupancy. And I have my mortgages coming due, and I'm maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 months behind. What can they do? Just work with their local banks? What's the magic, the magic wand? What can they do? Because that's what's happening. That's what the answers that people listen to the show want. What can I do today? Yes, we're frustrated. Yes, government may or may not help us. Yes, this is very choppy water. But what can I do? Give me one thing that I can have at least some sense of control.
Oh, that's another challenging question, Anthony. And the bottom line is, you just can't get behind on your debt. Then you automatically become, kind of on the bad boy list on the bank. Secondly, if your note's coming due, that is going to be additionally challenging, because again, we're not in the LIBOR plus, 3 lending range anymore. That borrower is going to be looking at, as I said before, bridge territory, 7 to 8%, probably 2 points. It's going to take probably, realistically 45 to 60 days to close. It's like everything else. The COVID has caused additional issues from the standpoint of the lenders. Sometimes appraisers can't get out there. The staff is overworked. They're doing fire control and all their other issues, their foreclosures. They're appointing receivers on some properties. The banks are very lean as far as their people power. So the best thing you can do is just be truthful to your lender, explain the problem, and try to work through it. Always being forthright.
Right.
Don't try to be sneaky. Don't try to be clever.
Yeah. Especially, I think this is a time where you should and can get away with actually being truthful, because what you said, none of us have ever been through this before. It's a very severe type of a situation. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what distressed hotels are going through, how they could find solutions to do that. And for the audience, we're not talking about CMBS loans at all. That's a whole other thicket of complication that's causing a lot of issues. It's too complicated to break down today. Also, there aren't any readily available solutions. So for folks that don't have the CMBS securities, this conversation is going to be really appealing really to you, so we get a better understanding of what's going on there. So doctor, let me ask this question. I remember in 2008, 2009 type of time frame, when the Great Recession really set in, the mantra of the day was extend and pretend, extend and pretend.
I think
yeah, I don't know how much people can extend. I don't see how you're supposed to pretend at this particular point. So what is the scenario right now for hotels without CMBS loans that are distressed? What can they do? What should they do? Do they have a chance to get out of this?
Well, they have to get cash. They have to get liquidity, and that can come through several vehicles. We at our firm has been kind of pushing preferred equity because we think that is the least painful and the most beneficial to the borrower. On the larger urban assets, there are ground lease options available, but it has to be a bigger box, probably on pretty expensive land, because that's really where you're going to get the bump, because the value of the land is somewhat disproportional to the value of the building, maybe as much as 20 or 25%. There have been some sale leaseback ideas floated. We have not personally, our firm has not tried that yet as a salvation. So what we're really focused on, is bringing in fresh equity, basically with the eye to 4 different buckets. The first bucket over here to your left is the bucket to debt service for, let's say, 18 to 24 months, going back to those issues that Anthony pointed out so eloquently, that you have seasonal issues with some properties. So maybe they're going to be okay in October, November, but December for them, or January is slow, et cetera, et cetera. So one bucket is for debt service. Another bucket, ideally, is to replace that FF&E reserve, because clearly many borrowers have probably cannibalized that FF&E reserve to get to where they are today paying their lender, and that really needs to be repatriated. The third bucket is sort of a miscellaneous bucket. Perhaps the property taxes haven't been paid. Mm-hmm. Perhaps they've been delinquent and they haven't paid some of their transient occupancy taxes. Maybe a grumpy laundry vendor filed a mechanics lien. Clear up off those kinds of things. And then with the right sponsorship, the right box, the right location, we've been talking actually since April about doing a PIP. So that fourth bucket would be a bucket to do a PIP, and maybe it's only $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a room, but you'll get, I believe, three advantages from that. You're basically taking a page out of what Bob Alter did with Sunstone Hotels. You go and you do the renovation, you get the benefit. You're going to see your occupancy probably coming back faster. You're going to probably either try to maintain your ADR or be able to bump your ADR sooner. And you actually may, cannibalize some market share as far as other hotels in that market that did not have the benefit of doing a PIP. And you're going to, because you have a nicer box, it's a prettier box, it's cleaner, it's just been renovated, you're going to cannibalize some of that market share. So that's pretty much the mantra that we've been using since March, gentlemen.
So what I'm going to do, Doctor, is I'm going to back up a little bit, because you and I both are in the military, and there's a lot of abbreviations in the military that if you and I started talking military, Glenn would have no idea what we're talking about.
No,
so
but I pretend I did.
So a lot of things you just spoke about, like PIP, FF&E, preferred equity, land lease, LIBOR. A lot of those people that don't have the experience that you and I maybe have, or Glenn has, don't really understand that. So the first thing is PIP is a property improvement plan. So this may be a time for us to do that. FF&E is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And if you can explain how preferred equity and land leases work a little bit, so people can kind of follow along.
Certainly. On the preferred equity model, as a general statement, and you have to remember, we all know in our business, one shoe never fits all. Every single situation, every single hotel, every single owner is a case by case. And that's frankly part of the fun of this business, is we're problem solvers. That's all we do, is solve problems 24/7, 365. So if you look at a hotel, and let's just say it was worth $100 December 31st of 2019, we're going to make an assumption. Generally, again, this is one shoe never fits all, but generally, we're going to look at that hotel and say, okay, it's worth 75% of what it was worth last year, so it's worth $75. And then we're going to take that $75 and we're going to put either a 85 or 80% number on that, and say that delta there, that change between that 75% value and that 15 or 20%, that's the equity that the owner is going to have keep in the property. And then from that, we're going to extract the debt. Hopefully it's just a senior. It may be a senior with a mezz, a secondary piece of debt. And then that gives you an idea of potentially how much money they can borrow. So that's the simple Simon or the preferred equity formula in a nutshell. Right. On the ground lease, we're going to come in and take a fee simple piece of real estate, and a lender will actually buy the land. So the land will be bifurcated from the actual asset. Mm-hmm. It'll be a new 99-year lease. The effective interest rate on that usually is sub 5%, so it's pretty attractive. And then that 15 or 20 or 25% of cash will then go to the borrower, the owner of the property, at the end of that ground lease transaction. And then, so they have the liquidity now to survive. We're all trying to survive. That's the name of the game right now, survival. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, I was trained by Steve Rushmore at Cornell. I think the black guru on market appraisal and feasibility.
We just had on Steve Rushmore Jr. recently.
I've not met Steve. I've known his father since about 1985. Dear friend. But anyway, the bottom line is you're going to take about 100 basis point delta on the back end. In other words,
okay, hold on. 100% delta basis points delta on the back end. Explain that. I'm going to break it down, because one of the things.
Sorry, like 100 basis points is like 1%. Right?
Can one person speak at a time? 1 second. So what I'm just trying to do is, our audience is, a lot of them are people that were going to Cornell, people that are younger, people that are front desk managers, assistant general managers, that are desperate to know what these terms mean. And, I didn't get to learn these terms until I was an asset manager for Tishman. So I wanted to make sure that I know they seem pretty easy terms for us to understand, but half of our audience is probably not able to follow it. So I just want to be very careful.
And I do want to add that I spent a lot of years early in my career pretending I knew what all these terms meant until I figured it out.
So like one of the terms you just said is fee simple. Explain fee simple to everyone.
Fee simple means that you own the real estate. You have a deed that says that you, Anthony, own the deed on this hotel.
Mhm.
So that would be, I'll tell you when I learned, you know how I learned LIBOR? I was working for, and you can explain what LIBOR is in a second. I was working for Tishman. I was an asset manager. And I remember that we did everything efficiently. We had really, our expenses were in control. We were beating our competition in RevPAR. And all of a sudden, we're like $300,000 behind net income. And I was like, oh my God, I spent all day trying to figure out why that was. And John Paulson, who's an absolute genius who worked with me, said, that's LIBOR. LIBOR changed. So now we have to find $300,000. Now, that gave me a lot of sleepless nights, LIBOR. Is it going to be up or down? So explain what LIBOR is.
LIBOR is a mechanism to track the cost of funds. And it's being replaced, or it's imminently, if it hasn't already, I've been tracking LIBOR because nobody is using that index any longer, as I mentioned, because we basically are in the bridge territory. There's no conventional debt. So LIBOR is really, at this point, LIBOR is de facto a dinosaur. But it is an index to track the cost of funds. And
so now, what's the go-to measure now?
I haven't paid attention to it, Anthony. I've got to tell you.
Wow. Okay.
All right. So let me ask you this.
None of my lenders use it.
Right. So, Doc, let me ask you this question. I love the whole idea of the land lease, 99 years, but why would a bank want to buy the piece of land and let it sit there for well past the time we're all going to expire? What is the benefits for the hotel operator and for the bank to get into a relationship that's not just fee simple where you owe the land?
Well, it's a separate lender. It's a separate lender for the ground lease. And they basically are subscribing to the Mark Twain theory of buy land because they ain't going to make any more of it.
Right.
So they have a very clear motivation, Glenn. It's to own the land. The bank, generally speaking, not always, this has to be agreed to, of course, by the senior lender.
Mm-hmm.
The lender sees as an opportunity for the borrower to get liquidity.
Right.
Which hopefully means that they're going to be able to service their debt until we get from here to there. The problem is we don't know where there is as far as when this terrible black swan is going to be over.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that will give them liquidity to get from here to there and survive. So that the senior lender, that is their motivation. The separate lender on the ground lease, they have the separate motivation of owning the real estate. And from the borrower, the owner's perspective, they're getting liquidity. They're getting cash to do to service those 3 or 4 buckets we talked about a few minutes ago.
Right. Okay. So let's go to a quick question from the audience. Dr. Wise, how do you feel about sale leaseback options that are out there?
We are just peeling back the onion on that. We haven't seen one actually. We haven't seen the paperwork. We haven't seen one executed. We have really, we have been talking since March of this year. I'll just use a guess, but it's probably $20 billion of dry powder. And we've really focused on the preferred equity model as a way to, we consider ourselves the white knights without an attitude. We're California.
Yeah.
We're Californians. We don't have an attitude.
Right. So let's explain sales leaseback to people that don't realize. So, for example, NGM Resorts International, I believe it was Blackstone, got into a couple of deals, one of which was, for example, and guys, forgive me, I don't know specifically if these facts are 100% right. They sold Bellagio for like $1.1 billion, but it was really just the land. And then they got that lease back to them. So they were able to create cash flow, but they can still retain the properties as well. Is that correct in theory?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, the sale leaseback model, it was used in, fast food restaurants and so forth and so on, industrial forever, sometimes for owner operators. And it's interesting because it's really, it's somewhat of a variation of how, Conrad Hilton started Hilton Hotels. Mm-hmm. When he started the company, he was lean and mean and poor like everybody else. And he'd go to hotel owners and say, hey, I'll lease your property, for $5,000 a month. And I'll do all this. And you just collect the payments.
Right.
That's kind of what the sale leaseback is, except in reverse.
But
You gain the cash for your land, and you have a lease payment each month to the lessor. So now you retain the operation, you retain the right of use, you operate, but you're paying for it in exchange for that cash.
But isn't it kicking the can down the road a little bit in the sense of you still have the expenses? You don't own land anymore. You still have the expenses of now leasing the land, and you still have the operating expenses. So what if outside of getting equity, and I'm sorry, getting cash to basically keep the system rolling, if the system doesn't change in 90 days, a year, 2 years, 3 years, you're just kicking the can down the road. So you've got to be pretty confident that you're going to be able to, to get out of that, or you're just going to have a bigger problem on your hand. Is it too simple, or is that accurate?
No, Anthony, you nailed it. Again, as I said, we got into this. People are talking mezzanine financing. People are talking about sale leaseback. People are talking about the ground lease venue. That's why, when I sat down in March, that's why I determined that based on the 5 cycles that we've been through of these terrible times in our industry, that the preferred equity model made the most sense, because in 5 years, and it can be negotiated, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 10. 5 years, the hotel is healthy, it's cash flowing nicely. You pay that equity partner off, bam, they're gone.
Right.
Your life. It's back to same old, same old. You look back on the 5 years you just went through, and you kind of go, well, I'm glad that's over.
Yeah, but preferred equity is expensive, right?
It's expensive, but it's survival time.
Right.
It's survival time.
Right. And anyone thinking about going into the industry, the hotel business, or any business, this is the part of the business that most people don't talk about, or most people don't understand. Right. Because you and I can have this conversation. And again, I couldn't have this conversation with you when I was 38, 39, 40. When I became the first vice president of Tishman, I got a crash course from all my analysts in Cornell and John Paulson and Robert Schneider and everybody at Tishman that really taught me the business. And I was like, oh, I should have learned that before I learned how to check people in, because, one of the things I always tell my employees is, if the owner hasn't financed this hotel right, we are going to be miserable. If he financed it right, then we're going to be okay. Because and I've been in a situation, and I won't name anyone because that person's in political.
Oh, come on.
But when I was at the Plaza Hotel, that was a situation where no matter what we did, it was just not financed correctly, and it was there was too much debt on it.
Right.
And no matter what we did, we literally went from, not kidding, 26 front desk clerks to 6 in an 800-room hotel. We had to get a requisition, true story, and anybody that worked with me will tell you the story. We had to go to the general manager's office and sign a requisition to get a box of pens. Security guard would literally bring us up to the attic at the Plaza Hotel, open up the door for us to get a box of pens. That's an environment that just the financing wasn't going to ever shake out. So this, to me, is a real important lesson on, you need to understand these terms. You need to understand how restaurants and hotels and businesses are financed, because when you take a job, if you don't understand this, you're going to be miserable.
Right. That's a really great point, Anthony, because if you're working for a hotelier that's property was properly financed, there's a lot less operational pressure hanging down on your head, right? That's basically what you're saying.
Right. And doctor, if you were involved in that deal, I apologize.
Well, he did good by the deal, I'm sure.
Wait, doctor was
also, you just nailed it again, because that's the other, that's the other beauty of preferred equity, is there's no payment to the equity until the property's cash flowing. So those expenses you were talking about, whether it's a sale, leaseback, or ground lease, you don't have that cost. It's basically accruing. It's being postponed. It's forbearance, if you will, until the property cash flows. That's the other reason why we think it's the answer to the riddle, because you're not burdening the property with the other expenses, as you pointed out, Anthony, in those other 2 venues.
Right. So what can hoteliers do if their property is distressed that doesn't have to take those extreme measures that Anthony was just talking about, laying off a lot of people, having to sign out a box of pens, all of that? Is there anything that folks could do with their bankers, other lenders that they might have, to be able to alleviate some of the financial pressure without having to pay the piper at the back end?
Well, you guys ask the best questions. Uh, you can only cut salary so much and employees so much.
Right.
I mean, we're already down to counting pencils, for heaven's sakes. Uh, I guess the only other thing is they've got to look to personal finances as far as other forms of friends and family or other.
Oh gosh.
From the standpoint of, I mean, if that may be the only answer to the riddle.
You know what? But you say something, Glenn. You say something. You say, "Oh gosh, listen." When things are going well, a lot of your friends and family are coming to your hotel and kind of going on the nice trips that maybe you're affording for them. So now's the time to everybody to help. And also, this is something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but we have to talk about it. There's no shame. Probably go before the fall to sell your property and get out and go on and maybe just wait it out. Sit it out, go do something else, sell your property and get out. If you can come out whole or a little less than whole, then those are real conversations that family are having around the dinner table.
Right.
Should we sell to prevent future debt? And that's a conversation. And there's no harm, no foul if that's the right decision. And I think our prides get involved when it comes to our careers and our properties. And sometimes you just got to make a hard decision. And 6 months later, you look back and you go, oh, that was the best decision I ever made. Or right. You know what? I left some money on the table. I could have waited another 6 months. But to me, it comes down to your peace of mind and your physical and mental health. And that comes before anything else. Doctor, what do you think about that? I'd imagine you have conversations with people all the time.
No, you're absolutely right, Anthony. I've steered away from that just because it's draconian from the standpoint that we're in the hotel business. That's what we do. We own hotels. But you're absolutely right. There comes a time when selling the hotel is the answer to the riddle. And maybe at that point in time, there may have to be a discussion with a lender. Maybe it's not worth the debt. Maybe there's going to have to be a discussion with legal counsel, and obviously very, very heavily involved,
right,
on some sort of a discounted payoff and so forth and so on.
Right.
I just didn't bring that up, Anthony, because we haven't been pushing that per se. We're at that. We see this as a cycle, and we know that our business model is going to morph 27 times over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's exactly what this is. This is a 3 to 5 year trek.
Right.
Regrettably, this is not a blip on the radar screen. And frankly, I disagree with some of our boutique friends. I do believe this is a paradigm shift. We're taking some of our underwriting on properties that perhaps have done 75% occupancy for the last 7 years since it was stabilized and was new. And we're saying, this hotel may never hit 75 again.
Right.
We may have to underwrite it at 67 or 68%. If it gets back to 75, great. It's a home run. But we're banking on the fact that there are some paradigm shift issues here.
Yeah. I think you're right. And if you can also explain underwriting, that is a conversation that a lot of people ask me, how does the underwriting work? So in a few minutes, explain how you underwrite a property.
Certainly. Well, you'll have to look at the entire holistic picture. You have to look at the borrower. You have to look at the credit of the borrower. You have to look at the borrower's liquidity. You have to look at the borrower's potentially, otherwise contingent liabilities, other loans that he has that he is also obligated to pay for. And then you have to look at the real estate. You have to look at the, what is the age? Is it functionally obsolete? Is it exterior corridor? Is it branded? What's the term of that brand? He's only has 3 years until his franchise is up? Who manages the property? What's the term on the debt? Is the debt due in 2 years? Well, that may be challenging. We don't know where we're going to be in 2 years as far as replacing that debt. And then the other simple things, number of guest rooms, with a full service, limited service, luxury, et cetera, et cetera. We look at the entire holistic picture, put together a comprehensive package. We have to make sure that all the boxes are checked. We have to do a little bit of a background check as far as both criminal as well as any bankruptcies
Right.
or other. And then we send out the lender, and we sit down with the lender. We try to make the deal work. Sometimes we may have to look at other collateral. Maybe the collateral for that particular hotel is not sufficient to get where the borrower wants to go as far as the funds he needs. So perhaps we look at another hotel. We cross collateralize or take a security instrument against one of his other hotels. Perhaps it's a portfolio.
Mhm.
And we do some sort of a combined debt equity infusion into an entire portfolio of 9 or 10 Marriott Courtyards or other that are owned by an operator. So it's a complicated process. It's time consuming, as I said. Closing a loan or an equity transaction in less than 45 to 60 days is pretty difficult. Case by case, sometimes a miracle can happen, but it's going to be 45, 60 days.
Right.
It's going to be a very thorough analysis of both the borrower and the real estate. And I got to tell you, lenders are nervous. They're seeing what's happening. They've got all these potential foreclosures on the books. They're kicking the can down the road, as Glenn pointed out, on other properties. Do they really want to have another hotel loan? Do they want to have another potential problem? These are very challenging times from the standpoint of underwriting.
Right.
Again, we just have to all tell each other the truth and cooperate. The biggest quality that I think our firm has is we have empathy. We realize that this is no one's fault. This black swan came out of left field. So we're very, very heavy on the empathy, because that's very, very important.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because if you have a good person that's done a really good job for a long time, that goes a long way, and it's going to actually come back to you, later down the road, because that person will work hard to get out of that situation. As you're talking, one of the examples that came to mind is most people, when they're trying to finance a hotel, don't make it past the first date. If you're going to get really, if you're going to get the loan, you're probably on the 9th or 10th date, and then you get married. But it takes a lot of dating before that underwriting makes sense for everyone. And most people get crushed by the first date. And usually most people don't make it out of the third date. So right. It's a long process. I know, Glenn, you want to talk about valuations.
I do. Yeah, I do. So, Doc, obviously, valuations are going to be going down during this period of time. You would talk about maybe people selling. They'll probably get a lower price. What is your prognostication in general? I know it's very hard because it's very property specific type of a thing. Overall, how do you see valuations changing? And if I own a hotel and suddenly my value is 20, 30% less, can I go back to the town that I'm in and say, hey, my property's worth a lot less. I shouldn't need to pay as many taxes. How do you see all of this coming together?
Well, it's an excellent question, of course. We're pretty much going back to what we saw most recently with 2008, 2010. And we're looking at overall, at the end of the day, probably about a 27% decrease.
Wow.
And that's pretty, that's pretty consistent. Suzanne's a very dear friend, Suzanne Mellon, HVS 85. I'm sorry,
yep.
Since 1985, very dear friend. That's the most recent data that she provided for a webinar we did recently. The other thing we haven't talked about, and we should just mention since you just brought it up, Ben, very excellent point, is we incorporated into our firm this last June. We signed a joint venture agreement with a major firm here in California that specializes in property tax reductions. Mm-hmm. They have done successfully executed property tax reductions for over 11,000 hotels in the Southeast over the last 11 years. So we're endeavoring to push that service as well, because if the property is going down 27%, for heaven's sakes, get your claim in now. You may not get the money till next year, but let's drive those property taxes down on a go-forward basis. That money goes directly to your bottom line into service debt and other.
Right, and that's more important than ever. And we've got a sponsor coming on soon that's going to be focused on helping companies with that. I totally forgot that they were coming on board, but I think this is the perfect time for that particular type of product and service that's out there. Help people pay less money, keep that cash flow going, help keep the lights on, keep people employed.
Can I change a little bit? Can we kind of go back to travel? Right now there's 30 states on the basically quarantine list if you come to New York City. So nobody's coming to New York City. You can't go to California, you can't go to Vegas, you can't go anywhere. And I think we're at a point where it's proven that traveling by airplane or car or going to a hotel room is basically safe. Where we get into problems is when people go into other people's homes. So if you're going to have a party, you're going to have, dinner, or you're going to have the holidays, and you're not, careful of who you're inviting into your home, or people aren't tested, that's where the problems are coming. It's not coming from somebody getting on an airplane or somebody going on a beach, or like last night I saw the World Series at 25% of the stadium was full and the rest was empty, and they were all socially distanced and wearing masks, most of them.
Cool.
So we need to travel We need to potentially think about getting these states off the quarantine list here in New York. So the hotels in New York City in Times Square could at least have a fighting chance, because the longer these quarantines stay in place, they don't have a chance. And I would be the last person to say that 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. But
Right.
I think the people that are traveling, and I also have to give a shout out to the restaurants and the hotels and every place that I go into, the retail stores. They're making people wear masks. The grocery stores. Very rarely do I go anywhere where people aren't wearing their mask and aren't doing the right thing. So it's time. If not, we're going to get crushed.
Yeah, I totally agree. We are going to get crushed if that's the situation. So considering all of these types of things, if government refuses to allow businesses to open and there's an insane deleterious effect on travel, I know you're not an attorney, Dr. Wise, but do hoteliers...
I'm too nice.
Yeah, do you think that there's a possibility in the future, based on your years of experience, that hoteliers and other business sectors could start to sue government because they're being prevented from earning an income? Is there any basis to that whatsoever?
Oh boy, that is so outside my box, Glenn.
I figured, but I couldn't help but ask.
I would like to comment on something Anthony just said, because I think he just nailed another point, frankly.
Yeah.
We've been watching Europe a little bit to see how Europe is coming back. And there's some interesting numbers coming out of Europe, in that the Airbnb business model seems to be recovering faster than our hotel brethren.
Right.
I think the answer is very simple. You sign in with your credit card online.
Yep.
You get to the Airbnb, and there's a key under the mat, and you let yourself in, and you and your family spend your week or your 4 or 5 days. And when you leave, you sign something online, you put the key back under the mat, and you go home.
Right.
And not the cleanliness issue the hotels have been pushing so much that is the issue. It's just being around other human beings.
That's right.
That is what scares the pants off people.
Yeah.
And that's why the Airbnb model, to my amazement, frankly, because I'm not a big fan of the concept. I think that's such an unlevel playing field. Now that we don't have to go there.
Right.
But the fact is, as Anthony said, it's the people issue.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't want to be around other people.
Yeah,
right, absolutely. I was in a hotel the other day, and it said 8 people per elevator, and I was like, "Well, that's
8
for me, 8." And so, and I took the stairs, and I don't get in elevators unless there's only one other person, and sometimes I just wait until it's completely empty. So you can travel safely, but we have to move. And listen. Again, I've been a big proponent of the lockdown in the beginning because it was getting crazy here in New York.
We also didn't understand what was going on, and the science wasn't figured out yet.
When you see freezer boxes going into the hospital that you usually go to, and you see one of your dearest friends in the world pass away from this, you are kind of hesitant to get back going. Mm-hmm. But right now, I think we're in a situation where hopefully the vaccine will be here, but we are going to be losing major cities if we're not careful. Because could you imagine any city you go to in the country, San Francisco, Chicago, New York, shut all the hotels, shut all the big hotels, just shut them down. Mm-hmm. Vegas, shut them down. What does that city look like? Right. What do those employees look like? What does poverty look like? What do food lines look like? If you shut down the Vegas hotels, Nevada's out of business. They're the biggest employer in the state. So this isn't about only Democrat, Republican, open, close. This is about exactly what we've been talking about. This is about jobs, and this is about people. You can travel safely. We need to travel. And we've been talking, and we're a proponent on the show of book your vacation. Make sure you can cancel at any time and get your money back, but book your vacation. We need to get these people back to work. We need to get our housekeepers, our bellmen, our doormen, our bartenders back to work.
Right. Doctor, here's something that I'm finding is very distressing to me. I've been watching a bunch of YouTube lately, and all I see on it, besides political ads, because everybody's paying for those these days, are ads for Vrbo, right? VRBO. We've all seen them, and they're talking exactly what you're talking about. Have a great escape. You've been cloistered in your residence for a long time. Come here. You don't have to be around other people. You can have all the space you need to spread out and feel safe. I have not seen any hotel companies do any meaningful advertising that cuts to the heart of what people are feeling and experiencing right now in their lives. And I think it's putting them at a disadvantage. Have you seen any evidence that the hotels are out there trying to promote themselves in a healthy way that really cuts to what the consumer is looking for today and interested in, or are they just still focused on, disinfectant wipes?
Well, I do not want to be any way perceived as disparaging of our brand friends.
Well, I'm not mentioning any specific companies, but I'm just not seeing them connect with customers right now in that way.
Glenn, I concur with what you just said 100%.
Yeah. And I think, Glenn, that's a really good point because, but again, let's look at it like, again, in the military, you're dealing with the enemy in front of you, right? So what do you have to do with the enemy in front of you? You've got to take that enemy out. So I think, when you're driving these big buses of brands and you're just trying to survive, you're dealing with the enemy in front of you. Now I think it's going to be about more position marketing. It's going to be more empathy. It's going to be more showing families enjoying the pool without a lot of people around the pool. But frankly speaking, is if you look at it just from a marketing play, Airbnb and those kind of venues just have an edge over us. They just do. Usually they don't, but right now they do, and people are going to make that decision. You and I have traveled a lot. We've seen a lot of hotels. We know how we can be safe. We know what hotels, what brands. We know where to go and how to do it. Most people don't. So what they see is when they say, okay, you know what, guys, we got to get away. We're just going to book a house and we're just going to go. And there's not a lot of thought. So right now they've got a little bit of an edge on that. So I don't think it's so much about the brands not doing anything. I think they've done a lot. I think it's simply that there's just something in play that we haven't seen before. That people don't want to be around people. Are you crazy?
Right.
Like you travel to be around people, and now we literally don't want to be around people. Like I'm
crazy.
I'm going to go again. Not to bring up my poker, but I'm going to go play poker, and I'm hoping that everybody's masked up in this glass around me.
Are you going to be going to Borgata, which reopened their poker room at 10 a.m. this morning, Anthony?
I can't talk about that. I will just say you and I have to have a conversation about tomorrow's show.
Oh, okay. Well, all right, Doc. Before we start to wind down this conversation, let's talk about how you've done what you've done for our country by serving in the military. You served in Vietnam. Anthony served in the military, and you've have lasting physical effects from being a Marine. Could you share what that experience was like with us?
Well, the United States Marine Corps is probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I was literally a D student in high school. Mm-hmm. I was more interested in my girlfriend and my Corvette, not necessarily in that order. And
sorry about your girlfriend, but I bet you it was a great car.
56 Vet, classic. I enlisted in the Marine Corps. I wasn't drafted.
Wow.
And I thought I was enlisting to, protect motherhood, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Little did I know I was probably, supporting the military-industrial complex, but let's not go there. Mm-hmm. I went through San Diego MCRD. I did my training with a M14 rifle at Camp Pendleton. Back to MCRD, then back to Camp Pendleton to prepare for Vietnam. We called staging battalion. We live in the bush for 3 weeks, as you do in combat. And then off to war, wounded, came home. In the meantime, I almost died of malaria. I had a 106.5 fever, medevac me to the hospital ship, and they gave a medication which, just like chemo, it saves lives, but there's collateral damage. In my case, it was my ears. I have hearing aids. I'm almost totally deaf.
Wow.
And then, of course, I was a grunt. I was no 311. I had 7 KIAs in combat, and I was exposed to Agent Orange. So fast forward to 2008, and I can't feel my feet from peripheral neuropathy, which is from Agent Orange. Mm-hmm. So I went from speaking at 10 to 11 hotel conferences a year at NYU and Alice and Rome for Morris Lasky, a dear friend. Meet the Money, lodging conference, all those, either a moderator, speaker, panelist. I spoke at Morris' very first conference on finance at the Phoenician in 1995 when he did the very first lodging conference.
Yep.
So I'd done that for 25 years. Well, I can't do that anymore. So that was challenging. So, now I have a good team. I have 14 managing directors, all 30-year guys. So I've expanded. I can't travel as much as I used to, but I've got a great team. The wind beneath my wings that take care of me and make me look good. I do my underwriting and our team players and all that. So yeah, we do what we have to do.
Yeah,
The Marine Corps is the best thing that ever happened to me. I could not do what I've done today without the discipline and other I was taught in the United States Marine Corps.
I say it every day almost on this show. The Air Force saved my life. It's going to be my book. It's going to be a whole chapter in my book of how the Air Force saved my life. I was not in combat like yourself. So again, thank you not only for your service, but thank you for your sacrifice. But it taught me order. It taught me you get stuff done. End of story. No excuses. And I will say, and I take a little bit offense, Doctor, and I don't mean to upset you, but anytime I walked into a restaurant or a bar on base, the Marines would say Air Force and chase us out of the building. Okay. They call us Air Force. They call us Air Force. And then we would have to remind them that, we brought you in and we take you out. We can leave you there or you'd be nice to us. But they were always jealous. The Marines were always jealous of our barracks, of our gyms, of our food hall, because you guys are in the trenches. And again, the Air Force, they're in the trenches a lot, but we just seem to have a little bit better facilities. And I was never, and I never felt guilty about that.
God bless you, Anthony.
I will tell you that there was a couple of Marines in Honduras when I was in Sotocana Air Base in Honduras. We were at the Army base, and there was a couple of Marines there on temporary duty assignment for, I think, a couple of days doing some kind of reconnaissance. And they literally chased me. And that's when I was in pretty good shape and I was lifting a lot of weight. They chased me out of the chow hall. I don't know. They didn't like my Brooklyn accent or something. And I will just tell you, I would have won a gold medal in the 50-yard dash that day.
So, Doc, I also know that you do a lot of philanthropy and giving back and deal with a lot of different causes, such as homelessness. You focus on homeless women and homeless veterans. Why is there such a large percentage of homeless veterans? For every great story I hear of yours, of Anthony's, there's other tragic stories that come out of it.
Well, this is a very sad story. It's a downer to end on. 47.
We won't end on it. We'll end on something positive. Don't worry.
47% of Vietnam veterans are homeless. There's about 556,000 of us. Of course, that was a war. There was men then, no women. Out of 556,000, approximately 47% are homeless. I personally believe that it's because we were treated so badly when we came home.
Yes.
I got out of the Marine Corps on Friday, had a relapse of malaria.
Mm-hmm.
I got out of the Marine Corps about a week and a half late. I got out of the Marine Corps on Friday. I started at University of Southern California on Monday, starting college. My hair was pretty hard to miss. It's pretty hard to miss a Marine Corps haircut. It's a little bit longer than Anthony's.
Right.
And I was spit on and called a baby killer for 3 months until my hair grew out.
Wow.
Until my neuropathy in 2008, when I had to explain to people that why I had a cane. I never talked about being a Marine or Vietnam from 1970 to 2008 because that's the way we were treated. I almost cried talking about it.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine going through life like that and people not understanding that you didn't start this. You just tried to do what was best for all of us at home.
Doctor, if you finish your thought, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, fast forward, historically, the Afghanistan, Iraq 1, Afghanistan, and Iraq 2 vets have had a 17% homelessness. Mm-hmm. So that's a little easier to understand.
Right.
But I believe in my heart of hearts firmly that the 47% is just because we were treated very, very badly when we came home.
Yeah, and there's nothing that we can ever do in this country to repay that. And what's going on now, it's almost like people don't realize we're still at war, and people don't realize there's still men and women going to war and going on 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different tours. It's unheard of in the history of America. I mean, I think in World War II or Vietnam, you go to 2 or 3 tours. They were long tours. They were horrendous tours. But these men and women today also are going to so many different tours. That's why the suicide rate is so high among military. And nobody's talking about it. And not only nobody's talking about it, nobody cares. No one cares about the troops coming home, and they're coming home every single day. You see it on YouTube, and when people are hugging their children, and everybody celebrates that. But what happens when they get out? What happens when they go to the VA? And when you have the means to make sure that you get the best care. But what happens when you get into the VA system? I hear horror stories. I hear good stories. I hear great stories, but I also hear horror stories. And so this hopefully we'll have you back on and talk about this on another show. But understand that people do appreciate everything you've done, and not only what you've done in the military, but what you've done for many families in helping them finance their dream, because that's what you've done. You help finance American dream. You help finance people's livelihood. And so for that, I'm thankful. And again, thank you for your service.
And before we wrap up, let's end on a positive. Tell us about your participation in the Catalina Museum.
Well, I've been going to Catalina Island since 1951. I was 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my great pleasure to be a board member and a trustee of that museum. The museum was founded in 1953 by Philip Wrigley, who was the son of William Wrigley, who, as you may know, bought Catalina Island back in 1919. This last year was our 100-year anniversary of the Wrigleys owning Catalina Island. And I've been on the board now, finished my second year, just re-up for another 2.
Cool.
One of the things I took over or championed when I came on the board, became a member of the board, was that we need to up our game. And so I reached out to a number of major universities. My friend Andy Bennett at Pepperdine, Jim Ellis, former dean of SC Marshall, Howard Gilman at UCI, Dr. Daniel Estrupa at Chapman. And I suggested we create in our museum what we call the University by the Sea. And I was successful in doing that. I was a visionary for it. I was a co-founder of it. We signed a deal June 6th of last year with Dr. Daniel Estrupa. And once we can meet again, once Corona is over and so forth, we will have a University by the Sea for undergraduate and graduate students at our museum on Santa Catalina Island.
Cool.
And I'm very, very proud of that.
Fantastic. All right. So I think the last thing we could do is just tell us how we could find you. Tell us how we could find Turnbull Capital Group.
Well, I'm going to be bold and do what Jonathan did yesterday and what Daryl Hartley Leonard did at the NYU conference about 1985 and give out my cell number.
Oh,
hold on. I'm writing this one down.
Yeah.
It is 949-283-9706. 949-283-9706. My email is Dr. Donald W. Wise, Dr. Dr. Donald, D-O-N-A-L-D, middle initial W, Wise, W-I-S-E, at gmail.com. Our website is www.turnbullcapitalgroup.com. And that's as clear as I can be.
Yeah, beautiful. Can we get a DNA sample as well?
Of course you can. Only for you.
Thank you so much.
I'm actually putting it on my phone as we speak.
Yeah.
Again, one of the things that this has become, we talk about, college, Cornell, different organizations, but this show has become a classroom because when I was coming up in this industry, to get to someone like you was wouldn't happen. Couldn't happen. I turn on my computer today. It's 12 o'clock. I'm watching Anthony and Glenn talk about nonsense as always. All of a sudden, we have this unbelievable doctor come in and talking about capital. And now I said, wow, this is a really good class. And I get a cell number at the end of it. Where on earth can you get access to people in this industry when you're getting cell numbers to people that are helping run this industry? It can't happen. So, it just, again, you make the show better. When guests come on and they make themselves so transparent and they give out their numbers and they give out their emails, this is what makes the show, what it's become. So thank you so much.
My pleasure, gentlemen.
Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll have you on again real soon. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate you, doctor. Take care. Have a great afternoon. Anthony, that was really going like the school of hard knocks there, trying to figure out all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So many terms, so confusing.
But you know what? And we got a lesson, but I want people to understand something and not to go off on a tangent, but imagine putting your life at risk. Okay. Think about that.
I mean,
every day, basically crapping in your helmet and sleeping on dirt and mud. And you weren't in charge of ordering you to go. Political decisions were made, and you were put in a position out of your control. You're an American. You were brought up, growing up, saying, salute the flag, do the right thing, go forward, America, and join the military and support your country. That's what the values were in the 50s and the 60s. You join the military, you become a Marine, which is, everybody sees a Marine, everybody stands up a little bit straighter. And then you go to war, not knowing what's going on in America, and you come back and you're spit on. I want everybody to think about that. I want you to live with that and understand that. So when people today, this black swan event that the doctor talks about, yes, it's challenging. And yes, a lot of financial decisions and financial stress is crushing. I understand that. But just think about our men and women who are going every single day. Yeah. They're not in on the plan. They're not being told, oh, what's your opinion? Just go. And then they come back and to not be respected. So if you see a military veteran, whatever your political persuasion of, whatever your thoughts
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Just thank them. That's it. Yep. Simple.
Yeah, absolutely right. Speaking of thanking people, we'd like to send out a special thank you to Marcelo Mercadillo, who's been very helpful with producer Dave, giving him some access to potential opportunities. And I think he helped co-host some stuff with her. So thanks for doing your part to help us over here excel. Also, Anthony, we had this one great question that was asked when Dr. Wise was on. For those of us working in or planning to get back into hotel, what questions do we ask leadership to learn whether that property is well financed? Because if you do it in the wrong way, it might come off weird, right?
Well, first of all, you do a lot of reconnaissance. You do a lot of your own work. You talk to people in the industry. It's like, hey, what is it like to work there? Hey, you work. Listen, we're this small industry. I right now you can ask me, name a hotel in California and ask me their opinion of the hotel. Give me 10 minutes, and I guarantee you I'll talk to somebody that's worked there. So it's pretty easy to find someone that has worked in that environment, worked, and can give you insider information. That's number one. Number two, look at the reviews. Look at the things they're talking about. Are they talking about there's no renovation? There's no property improvement plan. There's no service. There's no turn down service in a 5-star hotel. There's all these amenities taken out. This is pre-pandemic. What does that look like? If that can give you a pretty good scorecard of where you are in that hotel, then on the interview, you're allowed to ask questions like, okay, so how long have you, as the owner, owned the hotel? Is there growth? Will they be opening more hotels? Do they have more hotels? So you can ask a lot of questions, do a lot of digging without saying, so dude, how's this financed?
Right. Great. I love that piece of advice. I love, Anthony, that we're arming potential employees of places with the information they need to know to protect their career.
Yeah, but also today's the tangent show. I want to go off on another tangent.
Oh, yeah?
Like I said in the quote that I copied from someone, don't depend on your motivation because it won't show up every day. Depend on your discipline. You treat this show like a classroom. Come in, learn, and take information, and then go and find our guests, hunt them down, and get more information. And if they're not giving you attention, get in touch with me, and we'll try to get you their attention. But we're trying to give back to our industry. We're trying to save our industry, and one guest at a time. That's what we're trying to do. We're not creating a solution to the problem. We're not getting a vaccine. We're not in charge of getting a vaccine. But if we can do something to motivate one manager to not leave our industry, one employee to say, hey, this is a good industry, we've done our job. And it is so critically important to do the work though. So those people that are sitting on the couch and they're feeling bad about this or feeling frustrated, yes, we all do. If you were inside my mind on a daily basis, you'd be like, oh, I want to escape. So for me to sit here and pontificate saying, hey, just do better and feel good, and that's all bullshit. This hurts. This hurts everybody, okay?
Yep.
But at the end of the day, being frustrated and not going back to your discipline is going to hurt you in the long run. Because guess what? We are going to come out of this, and there's going to be people in front of you. You want to be the person everybody's following. You don't want to come out of this where there's 10 people in front of you. You want to be in the front of this when we're coming out. So do the work now.
Yeah, and it's not pleasant. And I'll tell you what, Anthony, in the deepest, darkest times of March and April, we got up every day. We had to force ourselves to do it. And I remember the things that people were saying right in the onset. act as if things were normal. Get up, have a routine every day, shower every day, make sure that you're well organized and stuff. Don't let life happen to you, right? We talk about this theme all the time. Make things happen for yourself.
I'll give you an example. You, right? Your studio, which is what, a bedroom or an area in your house that you've used just as you were traveling, you come home, you use it as an office.
Right.
You put in lighting. You've put in, you painted the wall green. You've put in new equipment. And you've really made an apartment a studio. I'm not doing that for a number of reasons, but you have made your apartment a studio. I just don't. There's too many people in my house, and any place I go, there's noise. And I just, in my mind, I don't want a studio in my house because I want to make sure I keep traveling. But my point being is, you've done something. I've done things, and some things we've done to shoot ourselves in the foot. Some things we've done that have not progressed us forward. Like I say, at the end of the show, it's not just a tagline, be kind to yourself. This sucks. So what? So what? It sucks. We're going to come out of this. It's going to be great. And then something else is going to suck. And then something else is going to be great. And something else is going to suck.
That's right.
So discipline will get you through, period. That's why the doctor loved the Marines. That's why I love the military. Because in the morning when you're standing in line, the commander doesn't give a flying rat's butt if you have if you have a stomach ache or you're a little tired or you're a little stressed out. He doesn't care. She doesn't care. So, now's the time to really focus on yourself and focus on your mindset. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. The pendulum will swing back in your direction. There is no time of negativity that will last forever. There are times of positivity, but you need to make that happen. Don't get discouraged. We are all in this together, right, Anthony? If you need our help, just give us a call, drop us a line.
And you too, in the right lighting, could look good in a short sleeve business shirt.
Okay, man, I'm working on it. Let's see. Let me know if you think I'm getting a little too red or pink today. I've got this fancy lighting system here, and I don't know how to use right now, but at least I don't look too blue, which was
thank you, Curtis.
What I was doing before. All right, guys, thank you so much. So let's wrap this up. Of course, subscribe to our newsletter. Text the word hotel to 66866. Subscribe on YouTube. Like the Facebook pages that we're on. Follow us on LinkedIn, all of that kind of great stuff. Anthony, I know you're taking off from Hospitality Success tomorrow, but you're going to be back next week, right?
I will be. And I want to kind of go back to what Curtis was saying. No, quite frankly, has been getting a bit harder.
Robin?
What Robin has said. I want to get back to that. And then
it has been getting harder.
I know I got a call in a few minutes, but I think this is important. It is getting harder. But remember something. When you're coming out of this, people are going to remember how you behaved. People are going to remember how you showed up. There are some people that you have to take care of because they're not able to show up right now. And that's okay. I may be that person tomorrow. I may call Glenn and say, hey, dude, I need help. I need to take some time off or whatever. We're all every single day. So that role changes. But when you come out of this, you want to try to be proud of yourself. If that's asking for help, and saying, you know what, I was in really bad shape. I was really depressed and I asked for help. That's coming out of this strong. But you don't want to come out of this and feel like you haven't grown or you haven't been able to manage it. And if there's one person alive right now saying that they haven't had their moment, they're full of shit. And that is, to me, the most critical part of coming out of this is reflecting on yourself and reflecting on how you feel that you did. Again, that doesn't mean don't be weak. That doesn't mean don't ask for help. That just means, did you get the help? Did you come out of this stronger? Because, if you look the person to the left or to the right, they're having difficulty too. So if you're open up, they're going to open up.
Right. At the end of the day, the only human being I'm fully accountable to on this planet is myself. What are the actions that I'm taking to propel myself forward? It doesn't matter if I'm going to get rewarded with big riches or fame, notoriety, and all of that kind of stuff. What really matters to me is that I continue to put in my best effort all the time and have that discipline to put in that effort when I simply don't want to. I like to push myself, Anthony, every day when I'm ready to quit for the day, do one more thing, get a little bit closer to my goals that are out there, because that makes me feel good. That makes me sleep at night. And it also makes me feel less guilty if I knock back a bottle of wine while making dinner.
And I want to thank all the viewers that show up every day. I want to thank all the guests that come on, and also the sponsors. We're this is not a sales pitch, but we're getting too many sponsors to the point where we're really kind of months out in our sponsorships programs, and that's just a testament to people showing up, getting the numbers we're getting, and our guests that are effing amazing. Amazing. I couldn't imagine being a young manager and being around these people. And now
Right?
they come on our show and they listen to our show. It's just phenomenal. All right, take us out, buddy.
All right, guys, we got to wrap this up. Remember, the theme of today is you got one life, so blaze on. But
be kind to yourself. And don't take shit from anybody.
All right, don't take shit from anybody. We'll see you tomorrow, or at least I'll